Hi, Ron. It's great to see you again.
Good to see.
So, I am going to mute and let you share your testimony, another wonderful testimony to uplift brethren and to give them hope when they are going through similar situations.
Sure. This goes back to uh, 2008. Uh, 2009. I had gotten laid off from my job in February of that year. There was a big downturn in the economy at that time, and uh, they had passed legislation to extend unemployment from the usual 20 weeks to 99 weeks. And I found myself going through that entire 99 weeks and then some. And there were no job prospects. I put in all my requirements for unemployment every week, couldn't get interviews, anything. And um, the whole time I have less and less money to pay my bills. So I've got this much money in my bank account, and my bills are this much money every month. And over time, the amount in my account was approaching the amount of my bills. And of course, that's rather worrisome. If the numbers meet, I'm in big trouble. And um, whenever the amount of money that I had in my bank account would approach that of all my bills, something would happen. So one time it was a tax return. Another time it was a small painting job for a neighbor, painting a couple garages. I actually went to the feast on that money, $300. Got me through the whole feast. Another time it was a real small job under the table, but you didn't hear that from me. Um, just little things here and there. Of course, I'm getting unemployment, but it's not enough to cover my expenses. And so through this whole thing, um, for 2.5 years, I watched my bank account dwindle and dwindle. And then suddenly something would come along and pop it back up before it reached the amount of my bills. And the thing is, I never even canceled my satellite service or internet. I think I was on God time the whole time. You know, you would think under those circumstances you would tighten everything up and really reduce your expenses. I didn't have a lot anyways, other than those few things and gas and electric and what have you. But I it's like it never even occurred to me to go cancel those things to save money. It's like God had me from day one of being laid off, and I never lacked for anything through that entire experience for 2.5 years. And when I got towards the end of it, I actually got two small temporary jobs. That was in spring of 2011, and um, I worked those. And then when I got to the end of the second one, I was laid off on a Monday instead of a Friday. And that proved important because once that job ended, not long after that, that 99 weeks of unemployment also ended. And so I needed to apply for another round of unemployment. And I gave him a call and found out what I needed to do. And I was told that I had to work for a minimum of 20 weeks to qualify for another round. And she looked at my records of what work I had done. And I found out that because I got laid off on a Monday instead of a Friday, that one day that I worked that week counted as a week. And guess what? That was week 20. So that seems awful coincidental to me. After 2.5 years of never running out of money, and always having enough, and then to have just a bare minimum amount of work necessary to qualify for another round. It's really hard to dismiss all that as coincidence. I believe fully I was completely taken care of by God, and He made sure I had everything I need. And I did qualify for another round of unemployment. And after 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks, um, I had a phone call, and I should probably backtrack a little bit on this. Whenever the phone rang in that 2.5 year period, I knew the moment I heard the phone ring if I was going to work. So when I had those two small jobs come up that spring, I knew in both cases that I was going to go to work. And when it rang that third time, again, I knew I was going back to work. But this time I knew it was a permanent job and that my convalescence was at an end. And sure enough, when I picked that phone up, um, it was a guy I used to work with back in 2003. Now, this is 2011, all these years later. And he called me based on my reputation from having worked with him so many years prior and offered me a job. And I actually trained this guy in 2003. I sat next to him, and he ended up becoming my manager. He was my boss. And I've been working ever since that time with the same job. It's been a very good job for me. And I feel absolutely blessed and taken care of, even to this day, with my job situation and my finances. I've always had enough, and I'm deeply appreciative and grateful for that.
That is an awesome testimony, Ron. It reminds me of, I think I looked up the scripture to make sure that I had it correct, and it's Psalm 37, verse 25. And it says, I have been young and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. And so it's, as you said, God provided enough. He may not have had you in overflow in that season or so much that it was just more than you could imagine, but He made sure that you were taken care of, so much so that you were able to get, a job when you needed it, a small project here, a small project there. And then that 20 weeks that you had with that extra day. So sometimes God allows things to happen, whether good or bad. In the moment, we think, oh, it's bad, it's horrible, but we never know what God is doing. So I think it's always important to remember that God sees the bigger picture, and we have to remember that He works all things for our good. They may not feel good, but we just have to trust that He has our good in mind and that what He said in that scripture is true, and we believe and stand on that.
And he's certainly not going to tell you what he's up to either. And so trust and faith are absolutely a must in these situations.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting you mentioned bread. Um, as you know, I am well known for baking muffins, and I've been doing that since 2004. And during that 2.5 years that I was off work, I never stopped baking muffins. I still brought a couple batches into church every single week through that entire 2.5 years. And I never lacked for what I needed to do that either.
Yeah. And the muffins that you make are by no means ingredients that are, simple or easy and so yeah, that is quite a blessing in and of itself that you could be a blessing to others
And they're not cheap
during
either.
your time. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, those ingredients are delicious. Everything comes together nicely. But yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that testimony, Ron. I appreciate having something so that when, we're facing challenges with our finances, our listeners can come back to the library and find this and other testimonies about financial challenges. And it reminds us that God is still in the business of taking care of His children and that we can trust Him. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Ron.
Yes.